Hello and welcome to episode 18 of Tom's Hirschsprung's podcast. My guest today is a movie actress, the founder of Her HQ, the owner of Swish Model Management, a fashion stylist, freelance journalist, international model, the vice president of Reach HD USA, as well as the head of marketing and communications, and also the president of Reach HD Canada. My guest today is Liz Crawford. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you're somebody that I've been wanting to interview, to talk to from day one from this podcast, because Reach HD is, and we'll talk about it soon, but Reach HD is huge. And now that you've obviously expanded into Canada in 2019, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So what I believe from the research I've done, biggest Hirschsprung's charity community in the world?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I couldn't find any bigger. That was my sort of reasoning for it.
But you would be, yes.
I think when people like me who come across Reach HD will be really surprised to see just how enormous it is in such a short space of time. And I know that we'll get to the USA portion and the Canada portion later on. But if I could just start sort of with you at the beginning, because you have a child, Malachi, who has Hirschsprung's. Take me back to sort of 2008 when he was born.
Okay. Well, yes, my son Malachi was born in November of 2008. And, it was funny. When he was born, I sensed, as I think a lot of mums do, I sensed something was just slightly off. He's my second child. So he really wasn't, he wasn't really as alert. He wasn't crying. He wasn't feeding. He just sort of seemed really lethargic. And it was a really long labor and delivery. So the doctors and nurses kept saying, no, he's just tired. And I'm thinking, I don't know about that. Yeah. He definitely has youth on his side. Have you been a baby? I don't know, This went on for about 24 hours where he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't engage. And so finally they said, okay, you might be onto something. And they took him to check him out. And what they realized right away was that he had this distension in his abdomen and he just had no interest in feeding. And so they knew that there was an issue, and he was moved into the ICU unit where we spent the first month of his life. And for any parent who's been there, it's horrible and terrifying, and the unknowns are excruciating. They are excruciating pain. The pain that you go through not knowing, is my child ever coming home? What are we dealing with here? What does this look like? And of course, Hirschsprung's being not overly predominant in births, and especially in cities where I'm only from a city of 1 million people, which doesn't seem too terribly small, but it does mean that there's only one birth every few years or what have you of a child with Hirschsprung. So it's not like they see it all the time. And, it took 3-4 weeks before we were able to receive a diagnosis. So up until that time, they start with the worst case scenario. So your child has some, life-ending metabolic disease. And we thought like, oh, wow, okay, so we start there and we work our way backward. And so, it was a really, really life-altering, difficult time, terrifying. And then by the time we actually got the diagnosis, he was a month old, and Dr. Wiseman came in, and I love the fact that his name was Wise Man, because he honestly looked at Malachi and first of all made a million jokes about how he's the only child that looks like a toddler in the ICU because it's mostly preemie babies. And my son was 2 feet at birth and almost 11 pounds. So, he pretty much walked out of the womb and into the ICU unit. And then he took a look at his abdomen and he did a dilation just out of instinct, and of course he had movement. And then he looked at me and goes, for sure this is Hirschsprung's. And I was like, what does that mean? And I have no idea, I've never heard of this. And he said, oh well, you'll have surgery and he'll go home and it's all going to be okay. That was the best thing that could ever have happened. So for me at that moment, getting the diagnosis of Hirschsprung's was like, party, this is a celebration. Right, I'm sure for 90% of parents, it would have been devastating. But that point, I was like, I am signing up and I will take it. That was the beginning. And then, of course, you think it just that simple. Okay, so we take him home, there's a surgery, and ta-da. And that's when we began to learn that the real journey was just beginning.
Yeah. But that's interesting you say that you kind of celebrated the Hirschsprungs and such, because I guess if they give you the worst case scenario and then you go, oh, well, it's not the worst case scenario, it's Hirschsprungs. That's okay. I think that might be the way of doing things. Always give the worst case and then everything else is fine.
Right?
I think, yes, because I've read Malachi's story as well, and you have a really great YouTube video on the Reach HD Canada website, and it struck a chord with me because it's very similar to mine. Mine was most Hirschsprungs is sort of 2 or 3 days. I think within diagnosis, mine was a lot later at 3 weeks. I'm also second child as well, so a lot of what Malachi sort of went through and had kind of struck a chord along with me.
Right.
But kind of, so from there, you know what Hirschsprung Disease is now. He's had few surgeries. But I've seen on your blog that you wanted or started a blog, where you wanted to start connecting with people who had this condition and sort of wanting to know more. How did you go about that?
Well, so I wanted information at that time in 2008. And I'm sure you know this, and your mother would know this, that there wasn't a lot of information on the internet. There wasn't a lot of reliable information. And for a lot of the parent groups, if you have a child who was born with Hirschsprung disease, has a surgery, and pretty much has no complications, where you're not? On community blogs. You're not sharing because you don't have any concern. So when I went to them, I was like, oh no, right? It's often we're looking for information and we're sharing the worst case scenarios. And so I had to kind of wrap my head around that, like, okay, but what is the best possible outcome? And how do I get there? Right? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to start a community of my own, and I'm going to start asking a lot of questions, and I'm going to find out and put together these pieces, because especially in Canada, and I can't speak to how it is in the UK, but I know that often babies, they're born, they have their surgery somewhere between, usually 1 month and 6 months is the standard, and they have a little follow-up, but then it's kind of like, well, they're going to be okay now. And you kind of get moved out of the whole pediatric surgery circle. And I'm like, well, wait a sec. Like, there's all these unusual things happening. And Malachi did have chronic bowel obstructions. One time we had to rush him in because he had enterocolitis. So he did seem to be a more complicated case with more, he was prone to more side effects. And this was, even after surgery. So we were dealing with all of this, and I thought, okay, I need to learn more. There's no great resource for finding information. So I started the community, the Hirschsprung's community on Facebook. And I also know from what I do for a living, it's impossible to track down the one in however many, that have it and invite them to the group. How am I going to get people to join, right? So then I decided to launch a campaign. In hindsight, maybe some people thought, oh, it's not really in great taste. However, it worked. So I am very connected in my industry. So I asked my friends if they would wear a T-shirt that a company, Silver Jeans, provided me with a couple of thousand T-shirts that said Hirschsprung's community with the slogan, shit happens. Because when it does happen, as you know, it happened. And that was my personal experience of being in and out of hospitals with multiple bowel obstructions. And bless all of my, model friends. They're all standing in a room, 4-inch heels and made up to the nines, and they're completely getting shit on. And And one day, one of them just looked at me and goes, "Oh, well, shit happens." And I thought, yeah, it does. Well, we want it to. We really, really want it to. And with Hirschsprung, when it does, like, we've all been there, right? And so that's where the slogan started. We put this campaign out, and we were so fortunate. We had a lot of, really famous supermodels get on the campaign. We had, what is her name from Schitt's Creek? She won awards. The lead actress from Schitt's Creek. Oh, what is her name? She's more in the show. But we've had just all kinds of stars that backed the campaign up, which made it go viral. And that sort of brought people into the community. So when you Googled Hirschsprung disease or whatever, you would often see the campaign, you would see the celebrities behind the campaign, and it drove you to the community. So the community really started to grow. And that was, kind of an amazing thing for fact finding.
I do. I think with the slogan itself, I think it's wonderful and to the point. I mean, there's no point having a logo, and I see them all the time. You see them and you go, what is that? And it has like a nondescript font and a nondescript symbol, and you think, well, what is that? But at least with that logo, everyone knows what that is,
right?
And it's catchy, and it catchy to it, and you know what it is. So no, I think certainly when I was researching for when I started this podcast a few months ago, that was one of the first things that came up. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. And even if you haven't got Hirschsprungs or connected with Hirschsprungs, you're probably still going to click on it because it's interesting.
Yes, and it's fun. And so as far as awareness, and it was Catherine O'Hara was the actress. And so it was, it was really, it was really fun. I'm sure I offended a few, which was never my intention. But to go from my world, which was so not about poop, prior to my son being and about beauty and fashion and all this kind of stuff, to standing in a hospital room with 6 of my friends, and everybody is just so glamorous, and literally everybody got shit on that night. I was just dying laughing. So we're in it now, girls. And that was just kind of how it.
I love the way that you can marry the two, though. I think that's fantastic. You can take from one world and go straight into another. I think that's absolutely brilliant.
I feel blessed.
so the page itself is still up and still active at the moment. Yeah. So it's well worth, and for anybody who hasn't seen it, can you just give the title of the page?
It's the Hirschsprung community.
Yeah, nice and to the point. Everyone knows what it is. And then that's sort of there, and I've seen quite a bit of it as well. And there people sort of post their stories, and they post sort of and it's all. And what I quite like, certainly from what I got from your videos and pages, is that you're very positive about Hirschsprungs, which is kind of my MO as well in terms of starting this podcast. It's not about necessarily the doom and the gloom and whatever. It's about raising awareness, yes, but positivity as well. And that's what I love about you, and I love about Reach HD as well. Hence why I desperately wanted you on the podcast.
Oh, that's so nice.
So sort of from 2008, Malachi's born, and then when he was 2011, Reach HD USA started. How did you become involved in Reach HD USA?
Well, Dr. Alan Goldstein happened to see the Shit Happens campaign. And he reached out, and he has a lab at Boston Mass General where he is studying Hirschsprungs and stem cell research in relation to finding a cure for Hirschsprungs. And he is just an absolute amazing man who once told me, Liz, I wake up thinking about Hirschsprungs and I go to sleep thinking about Hirschsprungs. And I said, we should work on that. But his devotion and dedication to, treating and helping children with this disease, as well as finding a cure, is, bar none incredible. And so he reached out, And we started a conversation, and he said, well, there's a family here that's starting a foundation for Hirschsprungs, the Schneidig family, Eric and Isabel, and their son, Adrian, has Hirschsprungs and Down syndrome, and they want to do more and get more active. Would you want to get involved somehow? And so, of course, this interested me. And at the same time, I was working with our pediatric surgeons here in our hospital. Dr. Kaiser had noted that our Hirschsprung's community had really grown, and there had been quite a bit of press about it in our city. And so he was really interested on how the comparison is between gathering information in a platform like this and in clinic, and sort of the differences between and how this could be valuable. So I joined a research team here at the same time, and we created a survey tool for the Hirschsprung's community where we could run surveys and extract responses and create and actually quantify this research to help, get a better understanding, especially of post-surgery outcomes. And so I was doing this with this pediatric surgical team here, and then Dr. Goldstein called, and I thought, this is kind of really interesting. I'm absolutely on board with whatever, because I want to see the advancement. I want doctors talking about Hirschsprung's. I want people interested in finding a cure. I want the best outcome for all of our kids. So I got on a plane and I went to Boston, and I toured the lab and met Dr. Goldstein and the other doctors and researchers, and met the Schneidig, and decided that I would join that board. But at the same time, was doing the research for a few years with our group here. So it was kind of cool, because in the end now, I have doctors from Dr. Kaiser's on our board here, Dr. Goldstein's. So we have a lot of experts and amazing doctors on both sides now, Canada and the US.
Fantastic. I think that goes back to what we said at the start. You're very, very busy.
Yeah.
Working all over the place in Boston and Winnipeg and all over the place.
Yeah.
So then the board starts, and there's currently 6 members on the board. Is that correct?
In the US, yes.
Yes. And then, Canada, there's 3?
I think there's actually 4 or 5, but yes.
4 or 5.
It's some over Dr. Langer. He's on both. We have all across that work.
I think that's where I got confused.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm on both. So yeah, we're doing double duty.
Very busy. So then it starts in 2011. And just also, I know we've mentioned REACH quite a few times. But can you just sort of go through what REACH, or how you came to the name REACH, and what they, all the letters stand for?
Right. Well, the Schneidigs actually came, I believe, were the ones that came up with the name. And it's research, education, awareness for children with Hirschsprung disease. So that's sort of our mandate and our goal. The foundation does annual grants. So fundraising, of course, which is really important to fund research. Also funding programs. We're looking at an app development. There's all kinds of things that we want to do in that. Education for parents, that's so key and crucial and important, because, Dr. Google is not always super reliable. So the idea of getting, some of the world's best, doctors, pediatric surgeons, we have everything. We're pediatric surgeons, we consult with psychologists, dietitians, nutritionists, the whole gamut to look at the issues coming up and creating sort of a care program, if you will, for all the different issues that come up is incredible. It's incredible, because before the foundation, we didn't have this. We didn't have these resources.
No, absolutely. And I know I talk about this a lot in various episodes with other people that, 1992, when I was born, there was, next to nothing. Internet was very, whether it was even around then, no idea. But the fact that there are so many more things out, and especially what REACH has been doing for the past 15 years. And there's just so much more than there was before. And the work that you continually do with REACH, the USA and Canada, is that there'll be more and more in the future. So that now when people are born with Hirschsprungs, people can, or doctors or whatever, can now say, look at this, look at that, and I think that's fantastic. And I think that's very commendable. I think that's brilliant. And then I wanted to talk about a few of the features as well, when sort of going through the Reach HD website, is that you have an HD passport, which I think is just the best idea. I think it's fantastic. You would not believe how many times I've been sick and tired of trying to explain Hirschsprungs in 3 sentences. It's impossible. And to have that passport is such a brilliant idea. How did you come up with that?
Well, one of the things that we really have the advantage of understanding is we really actually do have a great understanding of what's happening in our community. And it's because we are the hub. So often a lot of our physicians will call or they'll email and say, have you heard of this? Or someone's presenting this. And it's like, well, yeah, because we're sort of on the front lines of families and patients and moms and dads calling and saying, my child was born, like, what do we expect? Or this is happening, or we're having this complication, or that's happening. And one of the things that we really noted through all of that was, there seems to be a common issue here where families are showing up in emergency and emergency room doctors they don't have a great knowledge of Hirschsprung's or what the potential complications can be. And, it presents itself, interclassal presents itself quite often just like a flu. So, diarrhea, vomiting, distension, fever. That could be one of 100 things, right? And so, but it's dangerous because enterocolitis is, can be a really dangerous and life-threatening complication of Hirschsprung disease. So in an effort to create more of an awareness that parents can advocate for the children, we wanted to create something that was legitimized and came from the foundation that said, basically, okay, this child, and it's, is a member of our community. These things are what to be kind of aware of. And this was the last time he was in the hospital, and this is his attendee. And it just kind of allows parents to go, no, wait, don't push me aside, or just hear this out, or here you look, and be able to sort of access that information quicker.
Yeah, on echo, I said, well, I think that's fantastic. It's from seeing it as well. It's concise. It's to the point. It tells you exactly what you need to know without going on and going sort of too medical. Not too medical as such. But right. I think that's incredibly good. And again, if somebody is listening and they want one of those, how do they go about that?
They're on our website, so you can download them and you can print one off, and it's yours. You stick it in your wallet. We also, if you ever need anything, you can email us. There's an email on our website, and we'll send you whatever you need. We're pretty accessible. We have someone on staff, so just to deal with all the things that come through. So we're pretty accessible.
No, definitely. That's a wonderful initiative. And another one as well, another brilliant initiative, the Reach Fellowship Program, that has now been going for quite a while. How has that come about? How does that work?
Right. Well, that was really, I think, driven more by our doctors on our board. And they obviously have an inside knowledge of their world. And sort of the importance of, being able to train doctors and that will specialize or have a special interest or a great amount of knowledge in Hirschsprung's, because that's one of the obstacles we see, right? Is that when you are born with a rare disease and there's not one doctor that gets to have a lot of experience in dealing with that one disease, there might be a handful who have a special interest, like Dr. Langer or Dr. Goldstein, but they most just, get one every once in a while. So training more doctors to have that special interest that we can refer patients and families to that can handle more complicated cases, or that are just simply on staff at a hospital that when a child is born, if no one else really knows, because doctors get a lot of their information from one another. This guy, Dr. So-and-so or her, she knows. Go to her. She knows, and that kind of the goal behind the fellowship program.
Fantastic. That's and you obviously send these doctors to specialist facility. Is that right?
Yeah, they've come to Boston to work with Dr. Goldstein. I know that. So, yeah, so we do.
And I've seen as well on your website, you not only just sort of send them there, you support them a lot as well, sort of financially, whether it be travel, air travel, accommodation, meals, etc. So you go the whole 9 yards with these people. You take care of them, which I think is fantastic.
Yes, because it's really an important initiative. And so we fundraise primarily for two different, our fellowship grant and as well as our research grant every year. So we are fundraising to allocate funds towards obviously funding a cure and better treatments for Hirschsprung disease, but also training more doctors to be able to provide better treatment for families. So those are two major. Yeah.
Definitely. And on the research grant as well, you offer a research grant every year. And this goes to sort of all around the world. I was looking at the last 5 winners of the research grant. They're from Israel, Belgium, Hong Kong, the US, Australia. So really, really sort of worldwide, as far as you can get apart. They provided sort of over $300,000 worth of grants. And again, if you could just sort of talk through and how that all came about and how that works as well.
Right. Well, the research grants obviously are a priority because, we're all here to hopefully one day, have a solution for Hirschsprung disease, to learn and understand where to find a cure. I mean, that's the ultimate goals. So we have to be paying attention to what research is being done. And even, it just is something that even if it, it always just, we know it improves the care of kids who have Hirschsprung disease. So it's not just that out from the distance thing, it's that right now thing, it has an impact. And so that's been the research, funding the research has been a priority from day one. We put together a committee that's more knowledgeable people usually than me. So a lot of the doctors that to read through the grants every year. And they really try to support, like as you said, different areas. Like it's really global because we understand and recognize that there are different populations too that have an increased number of Hirschsprung patients, or, it's not really prevalent, or it's somehow, and by diversifying it, we all learn more. And so our doctors are really committed to the research and making sure that, it's widespread, that we're supporting, sort of a global initiative.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Now that sort of wraps us up for part 1. Just to give people a little bit of a teaser for part 2. We're going to be talking about your own business, your Reach HD Canada, or your own presidency. Sorry, your own business, but how that came about, and what they've got planned in the future. So we will see you all in part 2.
Excellent. Thank you so much.